Hello, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. There we go. Can you all see my screen? Thumbs up.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So hi, I'm Kayleigh, and today I'm going to do a presentation over kind of the future of fashion, but really focusing in on haute couture, haute AI, and what it means redefining luxury in the age of artificial intelligence and specifically generative AI. So, love this quote, and I really just wanted to open my presentation and the afternoon here in the US, the dinner time evening in the UK and elsewhere. I don't think of reinvention as something you do, but as an idea to always be looking for something new. At the same time, you don't reinvent yourself every fiber links. And I'll get into it a bit more later, but this really encompasses a lot of what I envision for the future of fashion design and in haute couture for luxury brands and just for designers in general. So the question that I want to pose to the audience today, and I'd really love to get feedback towards the end of this, is whether or not you think AI tools, not just generative tools, but things that would work for tracking CRMs, other data input models, will they enhance the process of haute couture? Will it erode couture's core values? And whether or not you think there's a shared future in the new age of digital fashion and luxury fashion for new designers and legacy brands alike. So I wanted to go over real quick, and I won't read through this an entire thing, what haute couture is, because occasionally there's some confusion, but it is actually a status that you have to apply for and be awarded, and it happens every year. You have to have at least 50 new design, I'm sorry, I think it's, yes, 50 new designs. It's award, haute couture distinction is awarded by the French ministry. And you must have an atelier and employees working in Paris or in and around France in order to get that distinction. But this just goes over some of the background of it. And the idea of couture has actually been around for over 150 years, which is very intriguing and something to take note of. So speaking of haute couture, I wanted to focus in on one brand in particular, of which there are many, and that was Chanel. And so I do wonder, what Coco Chanel might think today if she were to see, her designs being utilized in this fashion or expanded upon. And while we could certainly have the conversation about IP and things of that nature, this is also a possibility for luxury brands and existing legacy brands to utilize all of the AI tools that are at their fingertips right now. So it would be really interesting to see what her feedback would be, in consideration that she was very much about evolution and maintaining that luxury presence during her life. So let's talk a little bit about the allure and the ambiguity of AI in general, especially when it comes to design, because haute couture in particular is not just fashion, it's art, it's dreams coming to life. And for consumers, luxury fashion, it not only elevates a particular brand, but can symbolize social status or things like of that nature. Whereas an oversaturated brand or an oversaturated market, or something that seems old hat, especially for younger generations, diminishes value to the point of irrelevance, especially when we're talking about not evolving with the times. While we are on the evolution track and talking about AI, one of the things that we have to talk about when we're talking about luxury design, AI integrations, and things of that nature is about sustainability. So luxury fashion houses are responsible for emitting roughly the same amount of greenhouse gases each and every year as France, Germany, and the UK combined. And an updated study from the World Economic Forum published earlier this year found that since 2013, the amount of textile waste has more than quadrupled. And now 85% of all textiles across the world wind up in dumps. And that is really concerning. There are a lot of other issues when we talk about, especially fast fashion, but even luxury fashion, when we're talking about textile waste and other resources like water and greenhouse gas that really need to be taken into consideration. And this, I think, is one of the biggest ways in which AI can partner with existing heritage brands to help them move towards a greener future, which is going to respond really well to millennials and Gen Z, which are getting more buying power with each passing year. Despite the fact that we are still in a recession, we are seeing more purchases of that nature. And so evolving to be more focused on sustainable fashion as opposed to fast fashion would be a great just foot in the door as far as utilizing AI in the couture process. So McKinsey did a study earlier this year, and it was about the future of fashion when it comes to generative AI. And one of the gentlemen that works there, really, he went in depth about this idea, but I loved this quote that human augmentation versus automation is going to be the watchword when we're considering luxury products, luxury fashion, and design standards. And I really do believe that to be true, because just like Photoshop, After Effects, and even photography itself, AI is another tool. It cannot function and go all the way end-to-end process in design or execution without human input. And that is where the designers and professionals who have, legacy status and years of handcrafted knowledge, whether it be in an atelier in Paris or working with digitized fashion in the world of 3D, can really pair up and partner to create something beautiful. So I suppose the question should be then, what, apart from the things I just mentioned, should compel legacy brands to, to motivate them to evolve their existing distinction and delve into AI at all. They are distinct in and of themselves by their status of being luxurious brands, of being in couture houses. What's the ideal for them to jump into 3D design, AI, Web3 when they are already standalone themselves? Well, really, first and foremost is relevance. Again, that goes back to sustainability, more buying power in younger generations. And while scarcity and exclusivity are the cornerstones of haute couture, relevance in the modern age is equally critical. Failing to evolve can risk making a brand seem out of touch. And especially now with rapid developments and the more interconnected world that we're living in, post-COVID especially, that can really lead to very harsh backlash very quickly. And so I think staying relevant and evolving with the times is first and foremost. Expanding creative horizons. This is something, AI being a tool that designers can utilize to really, if nothing else, prototype and dive into their imaginations. And I see that especially with designers who do have that haute couture luxury experience in design, really being able, once they are able to dive in and learn to utilize the tools, using that as a more expansive canvas. In the same way that building mood boards in Photoshop for the first time may have felt, I can imagine that AI is much in the same. I can speak from personal experience on that. Enhancing artisanal precision, for tasks, especially when we're talking about couture that demand extreme expertise, craftsmanship, and precision. AI can serve as an invaluable tool for those who are looking to achieve new heights of craftsmanship, new types of craftsmanship, and ways in which they can leverage their skills cross-functionally, in the digital world as well as the physical world. Again, engaging younger consumers, Authenticity, which is going to be a very big thing. It is already now, brand authenticity, personal authenticity, and we're seeing that continue to expand. And so being able to create a digital twin of a haute couture garment, offering a new layer of interaction from brands that may have existed behind, a wall once upon a time, to more personalized conversations with their consumers, and being able to be at the forefront, I think is going to really drive a lot of this forward as well. This says EP protection, and I apologize, IP protection. That was a slight typo. So when we're talking about blockchain and Web3, of course, this is a huge thing. Moving to blockchain, expanding into the digital realm, 3D design, can really help brands to protect their existing IP, which, of course, many of you know is already an existing problem when we're talking about using generative AI in any capacity. From the lawsuits and the new, recommendations that are coming down to artists not being able to copyright their work, and being questioned as to whether or not working with generative AI in any capacity, if there's a valuation there. So for luxury and legacy brands that already have, perhaps taking Chanel, for example, over 100 years of patterning, designs, structure, to be able to protect that and then custom train a generative AI tool suite would be invaluable for their designers and for the company as a whole. Future-proofing, which goes back again to relevance, and then redefining really what luxury does mean. Because luxury is not a static concept. It evolves as society evolves. Things that we would no longer think of as luxurious in our day-to-day. I mean, smartphones, for one. I think that the idea in the 80s or the 70s, late 60s even, of watching sci-fi films and having this all-in-one computer and designer and communicator in your hand seemed out of reach. And then here we are 20, 30 years, 40 years later, and we can do pretty much everything we need from right inside our pocket most of the time. Luxury is very much the same way. And haute couture has this brilliant opportunity point to redefine what luxury can mean in the 21st century without losing core principles. And so these are just some more examples of future-focused, ideations that can fit into this realm, for everything from AR and virtual fit, hyper-personalization, moving over to the blockchain with wearables, digital-first showcasing, which leads back into sustainability. There are some fantastic AI programs and softwares out there that are actually specifically built for sourcing textiles. And then, of course, there are 3D and digital textile companies, pattern making companies, things of that nature that translate between both the digital and the physical realm, so that we're able to do digital first showcasing, thus saving on, prototypes and things being wasted as we are going through the design process, ending up on the cutting room floor. And then, as always, utilizing generative AI potentially as a creative assistant, again, for prototyping, or a design assistant to expand the canvas. So I love also this quote by Coco Chanel: "Fashion changes, but style endures." And that very much speaks to the core of haute couture and luxury fashion. Fashion waxes and wanes, and I think it was earlier this year, I saw Janko jeans back on the shelf again, and a few other things that I remember from, 25 years ago. It's going to ebb and flow, but being stylish, having that luxurious principle behind a brand, behind designers, it really, it endures if you evolve with the times. So maintaining those luxury principles of exclusivity, expert craftsmanship, sustainable sourcing, being able to hyper-personalize designs, preserving brand heritage, which really goes back in line with evolution and with trajectory and history of a particular brand. Being able to protect not only, brand IP, but customer and consumer privacy, which we are seeing an increase from, top level policy down to just what consumers are looking for in day-to-day interactions. And then also things like trend analysis, staying ahead of the curve, which we all know, we look to the big standard legacy houses to kind of set the tone for that. And, of course, people like Vogue and Anna Wintour. But we do have tools now that can assist with that trend analysis by batching large swaths of data from newer consumers all the way up and across the globe to see where things are heading and then be able to pivot in that manner. So where does all of this kind of leave us at the end of the day? I think that right now, when it comes to fashion, future and moving forward, we're in this beautiful sweet spot, and it's still very, very early. It's a world that's ripe for innovation and for finding solutions where there are gaps in the technology, where there aren't matchups between what you can do by hand and what you can do on a digital canvas. And I think that integrating with AI with care illuminates the future in many ways. And I think also that there is the potential and the possibility for not just legacy brands and large houses to expand, but for people like myself. I do not have a 25, 30, 40-year background in fashion in any semblance. But I do think that AI in many ways levels the playing field, and that is something that couture houses and luxury brands should welcome. And the reason for that, for new designers getting into this and maybe listening to this later and thinking, okay, well, none of this applies to me, I'm just getting started. It does actually all apply to you, because you can take the principles of luxury design and craftsmanship and put them into your own journey and your own story. And, that goes back to authentic storytelling or finding your particular niche, how you want your brand story to be told, what you want to focus on. Is it 3D garment design? Is it really, sourcing? Is it hyper personalization? What is it that speaks to you in this new era? I think it also opens the door a lot for collaboration over competition. There is still very much resistance to change, but I think in some ways that's human nature. Change is scary for everyone, and not just for large corporations that have to integrate it from the top down, but on an individual basis. And I think partnership with new tools, tech companies, people in this field, with larger brands and even SMBs, small to medium sized boutiques and bespoke brands, that there really is a beautiful synergy there where they can learn from one another, trade, and then continue to increase visibility for both parties across the board. For newer designers, you have a massive opportunity to leverage Web3 and AI, because still blockchain is very much in development, as is metaverse, but the potential there and the financial forecast over the next 5-10 years, the implications of getting your foot in the door now, taking the time to learn and integrate that into your process, it's just a massive inflection and opportunity point. And there's fantastic communities like the Gen AI conference, Fashion AI, Metaverse Fashion Council, and so many others that are very welcoming, have tons of resources available to you to learn and scale in the direction that you do find most interesting. And one of the things that I tend to love about generative AI is that the entire community, and for the most part, a lot of the software and the tools that we do have access to, are very open and welcoming for feedback, for testing capacity. I don't think I've come across exactly one tool I was not able to test on the front end, absolutely for free, to see if it was something that fit into my workflow, into the direction that I wanted to move in. And it allows newer designers to experiment. When it comes to shared futures and for legacy brand, welcoming new designers in this space instead of sort of holding the wall where it currently exists, it's an innovation influx, which goes all the way back to evolution, revolution, staying relevant with the times. And it does open those collaboration opportunities for brand new designers and for existing brands to come together and create something that the world has not seen yet. And that's really, really exciting. So I think with that, I'll end there and say thank you and open it for questions while we still have about 10 minutes left. And I really just love to hear your thoughts in general about what you think of this entire idea. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was really, really fascinating. So if you were to work with Stability AI, for example, and you have access to all of their technologies and you can have open conversations with some of these brands, what would be your suggestion to them? And what's the sort of what are the sort of stepping stones of getting to that end point that you're talking about?
So I think really if you're coming into this fresh without any knowledge, background, skill set, it's to first dive in and learn. But with where I'm at right now, if I were to have open access, which fortunately, really we do. There's lots of ways that you are able to train custom models. Even being not very technologically inclined, you can do a quick Google search and find, hosting platforms where you can train custom models for that. And that would be my approach. If I was going to Chanel, who I think it's in 2 years, or I might be off on my timing, but they're either over or right at about 100 years of designs and patterning and saying, this is what you have in your design repository. This is, this incredible experience that you built through bringing to life, people put on clothes for a reason. And people wear Chanel for a reason. It makes them feel something very specific. And that is important. Now you can take all of that knowledge, skill, craftsmanship, and everything that's ever been done and train your own personalized generative model for that, for your new designers that are coming on board to utilize in-house. And if nothing else, to ideate from. So because right now we don't have an AI to sit down and sew things by hand for you. So do I think that's a possibility? I've seen some strange videos with robots. So certainly. But yeah, I think that would be my approach, is really taking the history and the heritage of the brand and being able to customize their own personalized model and tool set.
Yes, that sounds amazing. And in terms of like diversity and inclusion, lots of people have criticized Midjourney for always creating a very similar look that's beautiful and sexy and but very white and blonde and blue-eyed and things like that. So what would be your suggestion there? Fashion brands do need to cater for a global market.
Mm-hmm. I think that this is, again, another opportunity point and another issue. I really only touched on sustainability in my presentation today, but diversity and inclusion is just as, if not more so, important. The majority of fashion execs that we have in-house right now are mostly white men. And on Midjourney, they did do a survey a couple weeks ago, and the majority of the users on Midjourney, 80% are white men between the ages of 25 and 34. So I think that there needs to be a top-down approach from the development side in really looking at global positioning. And with things like Web3, metaverse, and really just community, we're able to reach, designers in different areas of the world and to integrate that. Now I know that it's, let's see, it's Wednesday, so Midjourney usually has office hours, and there has been some chatter about the capacity to train custom models, or customize your output a bit more with their next iteration, version 5.3. But I think you can look at a lot of the tools, and they do tend towards the same kind of bias, which is something it goes back to fashion as a whole, having kind of an issue with inclusion and diversity, and that's something to be considered for new designers and legacy brands, and really changing that as we move forward.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
So we've now have Alicia, who's going to be joining in around about 2 minutes. She's just finishing up. So we can take a couple more questions if you've got 5 minutes.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, perfect.
Does anybody have any questions?
Yes, please do ask your questions. And in terms of how a luxury fashion brand could potentially work with independent fashion designers, with the creator community, do you think that's takes away from the brand, or do you think that that could actually help with engagement?
I think it actually elevates the brand and speaks to their willingness to evolve with the times, because when we look at what consumers are looking for across the board, not just in fashion, but in any capacity when they're purchasing or interacting with companies, they want a personalized touch. And so knowing that you can go to Chanel or Dior and have some sort of one-to-one personalization option there, or that you can be a brand new designer and get your foot in the door, have a chance to compete or participate in an incubator program, things like that. I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago that Adidas just announced they're doing a brand new incubation program for things like that. And I do think that that's really important for engaging, especially Gen Z. I expect that Gen Alpha, when they have a bit more buying power, are going to have even higher expectations when it comes to that, to being able to personalize, their everyday life, from the brands that they interact with, to the choices that they make, from the grocery store and everything they do on their phone or online. So yes, I actually really think that's a massive benefit.
I think that's a great model for fashion brands to set up an incubator program. So it's not directly, changing everything internally, but so they can keep it slightly apart, but at the same time, it will slowly but surely create more of a culture of innovation in these luxury fashion brands. Thank you so much for your time today. We'll
Thank
now
you for having me.
to Alessia.